5 true stories of bodies turning against their owners. Imagine waking up one morning to discover that your own body isn't entirely yours anymore, that it has a mind of its own, turning against you in ways you never imagined possible. What if your limbs betrayed you? What if your flesh became a traitor, acting out in terrifying ways while your consciousness could do nothing? It sounds like a nightmare, but for some, it's a reality. Today, we dive into 5 true stories of bodies turning against their owners. Cases so bizarre, so horrifying. They challenge everything we think we know about the mind-body connection. By the end of this story, you may look at your own body with suspicion. Case 1, the hand that hates you. It started as a small twitch in 2009 for a man we'll call James. James was a mild-mannered accountant, a man who thrived on order. But one morning, while making his coffee, his hand, his dominant right hand, refused to obey him. He tried to pick up the mug, but it knocked the coffee over. He tried to scratch an itch, but instead, it flailed violently. At first he laughed nervously, blaming stress. But the episodes escalated. James began waking up to find his hand scribbling obscene messages he didn't remember writing. He would wake to scratches across his arms that weren't his doing. Doctors were baffled. Neurologists called it alien hand syndrome, a rare neurological disorder where one hand moves independently of conscious control. But here's the part that sent chills through James's family. The hand seemed to attack him when he was alone, pushing him downstairs, slapping his face, clawing at his own throat. Friends reported bruises in patterns that made no sense. James lived in constant fear of his own body, a prisoner in his own skin. Case 2, the legs that walked without consent. Next, we travel to Japan, 2013. A woman we'll call Miyuki, 34, began suffering from an inexplicable phenomenon. While asleep, her legs would walk her around the neighborhood, sometimes several kilometers away from home. She woke up drenched in sweat in the middle of a park, completely disoriented. Sleepwalking is fairly common, but this was different. Her legs seemed to have intent. Once, her neighbors reported seeing her legs dragging her across the street into traffic before she somehow stopped herself in time. Doctors speculated on neurological disorders, but the truth was far stranger. Her legs appeared to operate independently, responding to subconscious desires, and even aggressive impulses she didn't consciously feel. Miyuki's story became one of quiet terror. She could no longer trust her legs. Every step outside her home was a gamble. Friends stopped inviting her to social gatherings. Family watched her constantly. Her life became a prison dictated by the whims of her own lower body. Case 3, the eyes that betrayed. Imagine your eyes turning against you. That's exactly what happened to Paul, a photographer in New York, 2011. He began experiencing visual hallucinations, seeing violent scenes through his own eyes, people he didn't recognize being attacked. But the strangest part, his hands would then replicate what he saw without his consent, attacking objects, scratching walls, or writing in blood-like patterns on mirrors. Paul visited multiple specialists. Ophthalmologists, psychiatrists, even exorcists were called. But the consensus was terrifyingly simple. Something in his brain was forcing his body to act out visions he never willed. And the more he resisted, the stronger the compulsion became. He became withdrawn, paranoid, terrified of mirrors. Friends stopped visiting. His girlfriend left, and the final blow. One morning, Paul woke to find his own reflection grinning at him, mocking him with bruises and cuts he couldn't remember causing. Case 4, the skin that turned against her. In 2016, in Brazil, Lucia, a 28-year-old woman, developed a mysterious condition. Her skin began reacting violently to her own touch. She would scratch an itch, and it would burn and swell as if attacking her. Even more disturbing, her skin seemed to move in subtle ways, stretching and twitching unnaturally. Lucia described her condition as "my skin hates me." Dermatologists were baffled. Blood tests were normal. There were no signs of infection. Some speculated it was autoimmune, but the symptoms were more sinister. Her skin would flinch away from her when she tried to hold herself, even during sleep. Sometimes, she would wake to bruises shaped like hands, as if her skin itself had beaten her while she slept. Lucia lived in terror, refusing to touch mirrors, refusing to sleep without someone watching. Her own flesh, the thing she trusted most intimately, became a weapon against her. Case 5. The voice that commands. Finally, perhaps the most horrifying story, David, a 40-year-old teacher in London, developed what doctors called foreign accent syndrome, combined with dissociative control. One day, he woke to find he was speaking in another person's voice, a voice that ordered him to commit violent acts. At first, it was small, throwing objects, banging walls, breaking dishes. But soon, the voice became more insistent, commanding him to hurt himself. He tried to resist, tried to fight his own vocal cords, but his body responded. It was as if his voice and the throat, lungs, and diaphragm controlling it had taken over his will entirely. David was institutionalized, terrified of uttering a single word. The voice would mock him even there. It was relentless. And the scariest part? Occasionally, the voice would whisper things he didn't understand, predictions of events yet to happen, as if the body itself had access to knowledge his mind did not possess. The unsettling truth. These stories are terrifying not just because they're bizarre, but because they reveal a chilling possibility. Our bodies, the vessels we trust blindly, are not always obedient. They can act independently, betray us, or even manipulate us in ways that defy logic. Alien hand syndrome, sleepwalking, psychogenic movement disorders. These are the labels doctors give. But for those who live it, it's far worse. It's horror incarnate. What happens when the very thing you call you becomes a stranger? When the hand that feeds you, the legs that carry you, the eyes that guide you, or the voice that speaks for you turns into an enemy. Some scientists speculate it's just neurology. Others whisper about darker forces, about consciousness existing separately from the body, about something ancient and malevolent that can awaken in our flesh. Whatever the truth, these stories leave a lingering unease. Every twitch, every reflex, every shiver could hide a hidden intent, one that might not have your best interests at heart. Next time you brush your teeth, make a cup of coffee, or take a step forward, consider this: how much of you is truly you, and how much of you might be watching and waiting to betray you. Our bodies are supposed to obey us. We trust them, we live in them, we love them. But for a few unlucky souls, that trust has been shattered. Alien limbs, rogue organs, sentient skin, voices that command. These are not just stories. They are warnings. Because the most terrifying monsters might not be hiding under your bed. They might be hiding inside you. If you watch to this level, don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon for more dark, thought-provoking stories that dig deep into the human soul.